Hello, hello, hello. Happy day, people. This is Tea and Cornbread, a conversation with Sean and Tracy. I am Sean Johnson. I am Tracy Davis-Johnson. And our podcast is about having conversations with people 50 and over, where they're talking about their wealth, their health, and their life changes. So like, share, and subscribe. All right. Hello, and welcome to Tea and Cornbread, a conversation with Sean and Tracy. My name is Sean Johnson. I'm your host.
My name is Tracy Davis-Johnson. I am also your host. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, we are so excited about this conversation. So, Manny, I just want you to know you are our first male on the podcast. So yay.
Welcome.
Yes. This is going to be such a great conversation. We can't wait to just dive in. We have one of the top authors right now on Amazon, right? And you've been interviewed by Black Enterprise. I saw you on the Black Enterprise. I was like, all right. You are also, we didn't say his name, Dr. James Manny Wright, PhD and MBA. Okay, author of Heirs of the Great Migration, How the Past Became the Future. He's also an assistant professor in the Department of Education Leadership at San Diego State. Welcome, James.
Yes,
Manny,
welcome.
we call him Manny. You know,
yes.
I call him Manny. But welcome. So glad that you said yes to this conversation.
Sean, of course.
We are excited. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Manny.
No, it was my pleasure. So So go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was just gonna say that we are excited. We both read the book. When I started the book, I was telling one of my other girlfriends about it, and I said, I can't put it down. You feel like you're in the book. So awesome job. Hats off to you.
Yes.
Hats off to you.
And some of the things you brought back memories, you know, when
Definitely.
you talk about the Sugar Bowl and things like that, you brought back memories, and some of the things is like, oh, I forgot about that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yes.
it was like, and I'm not a big biography person. You know what I'm saying? Like reading biographies, I don't usually get past the first couple of chapters, but this, I was like, I didn't want to put it down. One night it was like 3:00 in the morning. I was like, I gotta get up early. Let me put this down.
Yes.
So I'm so excited that you decided to do this and share your life. You shared your life with us in this book.
Definitely.
No, I did. It was very vulnerable. It was a very vulnerable project. It was very cathartic is the word I like to use. You know, I came undone a few times. In that book, you know?
Yeah. And your cousin Trey, that was one of my boys. Yeah. Trey was one of my boys. Oh my goodness. Just the Burton Street days, I call it. Burton Street days. All right. So we do have some questions, but we're gonna let it flow at the same time. Okay, so we may have more questions in between, or we may not even ask all the questions, because depending on how we let it flow. But the first question is, explain how you came up with the title of the book.
So, first of all, you know, it's really an honor to be here with you all. You know, like you are, I think the first like official conversation that I've had with someone from Waterbury around the book. So this is an honor, you know. So I came up with the title. Basically, like a while ago, I read this book called The Warmth of Other Suns, right? So basically the book is, it was like a New York Times bestseller. It came out, I believe, in like 2012. It was like on the Oprah's book list. And it was basically talking about like the travels of Black Americans from the South, migrating from the South to different parts, up north, Midwest, West Coast. And the author of the book is a woman by the name of Dr. Isabel Wilkerson, who's I believe a history professor. And so she's a historian, and she was like, telling these stories about Blacks leaving the Jim Crow South for different opportunities. And she had like these very intricate details about, why Blacks from certain states in the South went to certain cities up north, because it had to do with like the sophistication of the railroad systems, or the highway systems weren't as sophisticated. So she was breaking all of this down, and then she was, and in some cases she had interviews with people who were, by that time in their 80s, 90s, who remember the time of having left, whether it was Mississippi to go to Chicago, and like all of these kinds of stories. So when I read the book, it immediately made me think about my family, right? It made me think about my family and them leaving North Carolina. There were two waves of family members that left North Carolina to come north, right? But that book started me thinking about my own journey. So like she coined the term, as far as I remember, she coined the term the Great Migration, or at least I came to know of the term the Great Migration as Isabel Wilkerson's way of describing the migration of Black Americans from the South, to places like Detroit, Chicago, New York City, Oakland, Los Angeles, blackening these cities, as they would call it, some people will call it. So the Great Migration is a concept that's pretty well known, but I don't think a lot of us look at ourselves as part of that history.
Right. Wow. Awesome. Well, yeah, when we think about it, it was a migration. It definitely was a migration. All right. So when you started doing your research, and everything in your family, and coming across a lot of the, I'll say surprises, maybe, because it seems like some of it was surprising to you in the book, but in the same breath, it wasn't, because then it kind of explained why some of the characteristics people had in the family.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to like a lot of I'm sorry. So it speaks to a lot of the like inherent trauma that, us as Black folks we've inherited, you know what I mean? And so a lot of that trauma has been like suppressed, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of our characteristics, a lot of our customs, a lot of things that may have been passed down from generation is not really fully understood by a lot of us, because we don't talk about, historically, our ancestors don't really talk about the past and like how things were when they grew up. And I mean, I can understand now as an adult, as a historian myself, I can understand why, because you got to think about it. Like my family, they grew up. My grandmother was born in the middle of Jim Crow, like literally 1920, like the middle point of Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. And then like the first 40 years of her life was Jim Crow until she left to come to Waterbury in the 1960s. So for 40 years of my grandmother's life, having born in the Jim Crow and then lived 40 years, all her adult years in Jim Crow, the segregated South, dealing with all kinds of like systemic legal oppression. Like it wasn't illegal for these white men to, to do certain things to Black men or to Black women. You know what I mean? It wasn't illegal. So what would happen a lot of times is, things would happen to people in our families and they wouldn't talk about it, right? They wouldn't talk about it. Right. You know what I mean? So they kept that just out of embarrassment or whatever, just trying to like forget about it, etc. But it always comes up. It always resurfaces some kind of way, but these are kinds of like, this is such a big part of the history of all of us, of all Black Americans. We all have these secrets. Like, I don't know if secrets is the right word, but we all have this method of not talking about, you know,
Yeah.
our past and our trauma. So to your point, the things that were surprising to me, a lot of it had to deal with elders in my family who were the same way, or something that they experienced that we didn't know about, or we came to find out later. And it's just untreated trauma, untreated
trauma. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right, it happens in all families, unfortunately. And reading this, you take people there. You feel like you're in the book, not just being that we grew up in Waterbury, like Sean said, being on the Sugar Bowl, different places that you mentioned, Long Hill, different areas that things happen. When you're reading this book, you honestly don't want to put it down. You're engulfed, and it kind of makes you reset yourself to say, hey, let me start paying attention to my family and my history, which is also a good thing. I need to gift this book to somebody. I've read it, it's touched me. And I just want to say thank you again, because it is like having somebody from our own hometown doing this and us celebrating you. So we say thank you to that, because it does. It opened up doors. It gets us to thinking. A lot of times we start somewhere and we don't finish it. So thank you for that. So hopefully this reaches many more people, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and our nephews. Everybody needs to sit down and read this and keep in touch with their people. Keep in touch. So thank you for that, Manny. It's amazing. Talk a little bit about your mental health, or your the influences. You talk about it in the book. Your professors, your teachers. You talked about some of the challenges that you endured. How did you keep your focus? How did you keep your wits about you? Because this book is really deep, and I don't know. Sitting here reading it, I couldn't wait. Like Sean said, I was excited to talk to you. So how did you stay focused? How did you keep your eye on the prize?
Like this might sound cliche, but like the only way I thought about this, I think about this question a lot. I think about this, and there's only one answer to this question, right? It was faith. It was faith. It was, me hitting my head against the wall so hard, so many times, right? And I was a hardhead kid. I was always banging my head. So, it just got to a point where, I hit rock bottom in Georgia. There's no other way to put it. But at a young age, I moved to Atlanta, and having, so many things happen like at a really pivotal age for me. And it was like the death of like really close friends and people that I grew up with. And then it was like coming to the realization about my biological father. And, like all of this happened at once. It was like the death of Chris Love. Even though I didn't grow up with Chris Love or anything, like I didn't really get to know Chris Love until I was like a teenager. And for whatever reasons, he took to me. He would see me, and he would stop his car, jump out of his car, and talk to me like I was one of his peers, even though he was a lot older than me, and on the way to doing big things. And so he left an impression on me that's hard for me to like really, even all these years later, for me to really fully explain what it was he did for me. And so to lose him, to lose so like Rhaegar, people that I grew up with. And then, like I said, like coming to the realization about my biological father and how he passed away. And then like just, my life was at a crossroads, right? And because I really wanted to do something different. I wanted to do things different, but I didn't have no resources. I have no access.
Template.
Right. Right, exactly. Like, Chris provided a template in a lot of ways, but it was still not, it wasn't attainable for me at that time. But he planted something in me to make me believe that it was possible. And he, by doing it, but also like with a sense of urgency, explaining to me that I could do it. Well, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to take, there was nothing.
No interest at all.
Right. He could have easily just, but for whatever reasons, he he saw different.
Mhm.
So when I moved to Georgia, man, I hit rock bottom. It's just like I just hit rock bottom, and I got, I got locked up, and really honestly, that situation was like, I hate to say this because I'm not advocating mass incarceration or imprisonment or anything like that. I think it's terrible. It's traumatic,
Mhm.
but there was a silver lining in it. The silver lining in it was it made me sit my ASS down.
Damn.
I was forced to sit down. I was forced to think about everything. I was 1,000 miles away from home, right? So there was no chance that the people that came through them doors was somebody that I knew from the Sugar Bowl.
Right.
There was no
Right.
chance that one of my relatives, one of my childhood friends was coming through them doors. Not only that,
Right.
there was no there were just the cultural differences, the lingo, everything was different. So I'm like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? And like they put me in a bind. And so, I put my head on the floor. I put my face on the floor, you know what I'm saying? And asking and begging and trying to understand life, trying to understand what my purpose was, what this purpose was. And I wanted to understand even before that, I wanted to understand, my purpose in life. I wanted to understand we people of faith, right?
Yeah.
Historically, we are people of faith, right? So, the I mean, that's the bottom line. Like that's the template. People of faith. So for me, I started to explore the options, what made the most sense for me, what was going to work for me. And and having been a product of the 90s and Malcolm X and like seeing how his life was transformed when he accepted Islam, and growing up in the 90s, he was a folk hero for many of us. And so
Right.
so I was inclined to that because he resonated so much with me. This is a person from the streets that was cast off. And not that I liken myself to him at all, but I mean, I think a lot of us who were from the streets and who was running around and all of that, I think he was the, if you decided that you wanted to change your life, that's where you look. You looked at him because he did it. I mean, he did everything in the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like he was involved with everything.
Right.
So you saw the transformation in him. So for me, just having hit rock bottom and trying to figure out as a person of faith and as a believer in God, what should I be doing? How can I worship? I was inclined to Islam. And I'm telling you, that's the thing. And I'm not sitting here trying to say that that's everybody's path. That's what did it for me.
Right.
That's what did it for me. And I'm telling you, there's like whatever else I could point to, it was that was the foundation. That was the foundation.
So I'm glad you said that. Yeah, go ahead, Trey.
No, I was just gonna say that that's a good thing that you took that and you didn't let it be a negative. And then when you allowed it, like you said, you hit rock bottom. As you read the book, the steps in front of you, the people that he put in front of you to help you along your path, and we all have them. It's just, do we want to listen? Do we want to follow?
Right.
And you did that. You know what I mean? You listened to the professors. You got the assistance from Chris Love, your cousin Tracy. You know what I mean? You had people that you looked up to, that you paid attention to when the time was right. So that's definitely a blessing. And like you said, everybody's blessing is not the same, but we got to pay attention when it's time. And you did. You did.
And you know that phrase, the teacher shows up when the student is ready. You know what I'm saying? And so, like you said, you put your head on the floor. You knew there was nothing else that you can do but pray. Right? And that if you pray, that means you surrendered. That means you surrendered and you opened up the door for people to just guide you and protect you.
So, I didn't have no choice. I was a 20-year-old kid 1,000 miles away from home. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have no choice. I'm in I'm in the belly of the beast for real. You know what I'm saying? And like so, I didn't have no choice. And Man, I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful, and and that's my answer. That's that's my answer to that question.
Period. So the other thing too is once you got out, right, and you kind of like just said, you know what, I'm changing my life forever from this point on, right? Well, literally in there when you were in the belly, that's when you started changing your life. Right. And so when you started and you decided to, because there's a lot of things that still happen even after that, right? But when you went to Egypt, right? When you went to Egypt, and was it like, tell us a little bit, even though you explained it a little bit in the book, but tell us a little bit about what that meant once you hit the ground, the sand, right? Okay. Once you hit that sand.
I was there with him. I
know, that's what I'm saying.
I was there.
Right.
I was right there.
And
with
I know
you.
we kind of like, we're probably going to go back and forth, right? But because you brought up faith, and that was the catalyst for your change, and that was the catalyst that you held on to. That was what you held on to, knowing that life was going to be better. You knew that.
Let me keep it 100 with you real quick.
All right, that's what we want.
So when I came home, right? Like, so, you know, okay, I won't get into that, but like it was incredible how I got out. Right, okay. Like you read.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
keep that. Yeah, let them read that. That was amazing. That's all we'll say. That was amazing.
Read the book.
And kudos to you for that. Kudos to you for that, because not many people would have done what you did and said what you said. But go ahead. I apologize.
So when I got out, right, I you know, like I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm going back home to Connecticut because, you know, that's just what I know. I need people to pat me on the back and rub my head, and you know what I'm saying, and patch me up. You know,
to hug you.
Yeah. I need to get back in that nest. Right. And so when I got out, Georgia pardon and parole folks was like, no, you're not going nowhere. You're going to stay here, and you're going to pay us our restitution, and you're going to come and you're going to check in every month, and you're going to, you know, I'm like, damn, like, you know what
they just won't let go.
Relentless. So I mean, you know, I'm working at Denny's. I'm like third, like, oh my God, like I'm struggling. I never struggled this hard in my life. You know, so they got me messed up down there, man. I'm struggling, man. And I'm like, I'm sleeping on folks' couch, on folks' floors, and like not, you know, like paying bills and like not knowing where my next meal. Man, I was messed up. So, you know, but at the same time, I grew up on the Sugar Bowl. So I got, you know, there's certain instincts that I have.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And there's certain, you know, there's certain accesses and resources that I'm gonna pull from if necessary. And so, you know, I found that when I was in Georgia, you know what I mean, just as like a means to survival. And, you know, and nothing that I don't regret anything that I did. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it shapes you.
Yeah, you know, but it was just, for me, everything is just about, you know, just a stepping stone. You know what I'm saying? And so I found myself, you know, shortly after I got out, like after like busting my butt to working these odd jobs, and then I finally kind of like, after, I don't know, maybe close to a year after being out, maybe about 6 months, a few months, I was in a decent spot. Right. And, you know, I was still working, but I still had, you know, little, you know what I'm saying, little ways to get money, whether it was like little hustles or here and there and all of that kind of stuff. And so, and then I ended up like, you know, like I had an affinity with the music. And so I was, you know, doing music and stuff like that. And so, you know, and then that started to open up doors, you know, and so, doors started to open, and then it was like, you know, like a little buzz in Atlanta, and then even in California, I'm speedballing because I'm going like there's
that's all right.
Speeding.
We know, we read it.
So some doors started to open up that led me to, from Atlanta to California. And then when I got to California, doors was opening up for real. And then, but I was like, you know what? I can't go in this direction. Because if I go in this direction, after everything, like the last 4 years of what I just went through, and understanding, you know what I'm saying, like what got me through that. If I go this way, I'm gonna lose all of that. I'm not, I could say this in hindsight, but at the time I didn't really have these words. I just was like, nope, I'm not going that way. I'm going back.
Something wasn't right though. Something wasn't right.
But didn't feel right. Exactly.
Yeah. I was gonna say your gut.
Didn't feel right. And so I left. I left California and I came back to Waterbury, and people in Waterbury who know, and there's people who know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this, and people who I was like working with, to try to get these connections to the music industry. And they were like, man, what do you mean you back home? You coming home? I'm like, man, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not okay with that. And so I just was like really serious about wanting to explore, what it was that got me through that, that time in Georgia. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, I said, I want to continue these studies. I want to, further my education, my curiosity. I want to find out what. And so I said, I was talking to some people who had connections overseas, and they were like, well, because I wanted to learn Arabic and I wanted to learn from the source.
Okay.
So people were like, well, some people that I knew in Waterbury and New Haven had connections to places in Egypt, for example. And they were like, well, if you go there are these institutions that are for foreigners, Arabic institutions for foreigners. There's a lot of Americans there. There's people from different parts of the world there. We recommend it. I know so-and-so was there. So I met so-and-so and talked to them about it. And then before I knew it, I was online booking a flight and going.
And so that's amazing.
That's stepping out on faith.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the crazy part was this was right out, like right before the Gulf War, like the war has started. And people were, I think, some people are maybe geographically challenged and thinking like Iraq was so close to Egypt, but it wasn't. It was, but it wasn't. Sort of in the same region, but there's a body of water that separates
in between. Right.
So people were like, "Why, yo, you going? Why?" Like they thought I was they thought I was crazy, and I'm like, and he's like, "Yo, but aren't you concerned?" I'm like, "Look, man, I grew up. You know where I grew up? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm more. There's a lot to worry about where I grew up.
More over there. Yeah. Right. Where I came from.
Right. So I'm like, so I ended up going. And I was just like, I don't know when I'm coming back, but I'm gonna go and see. I trust the advice that I got from folks who have been there and who knew the lay of the land. I trusted what they had told me. So I went. I said, yo, if I don't like it, I'm coming back. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna check it out. If I don't like it, I'm coming back. So I went, and then like,
you liked it. You liked it. You fell right into place, not even knowing the language at one point. Like, again, let me not get too much into the book because we need people to read it, but very interesting. And awesome. Like I swear I was there. I was with you when you were sitting waiting for them to give you your room and they wasn't. I was yelling.
Yeah. Right. In a room. Right. He's like, listen, they get ready to charge you too much. So yeah. And that's another testament on. I just keep going back to the faith piece. That's another testament of living by faith and walking by faith, right? Because you met someone that, and without giving it away, but that helped you out, saw you, came and helped you out right away, and then that developed into a great relationship and so on and so forth. And then you knew that you were going to be all right.
I mean, literally, right when I got off the plane, it was, it was literally right as I got off the plane and got from the airport to the place where, everything was.
To the school.
You know what I'm saying? Right, to the institute. And this kid just popped out of nowhere. It was surreal. It was surreal to, and even when I think about it now, like I don't, it was like a matter of faith, stepping out of faith, out on faith, and there's things happening. And like I always say, I tell, it's like there's a God involved,
Absolutely.
there's a God involved. You know what I'm saying? Like if you know me and you know what I've been through, and like people, like nobody. One of my high school guidance, I don't know if I put this in the book, but one of my high school guidance counselors said to me one day, she said, by the time you're 21, she said, you're gonna have a criminal record as long as your arm if you're not dead.
I think you did.
That was devastating.
Something you did allude to. Somebody said something like that to one of the teachers or something. Yeah,
that's a devastating thing.
How do you say that? Right.
Yeah, but if I'm real, she wasn't off base. She was, if I'm being real.
Right.
But as an adult and as an educator, you still shouldn't say that. That's enough.
Right.
There's two things here. There's two things here. You shouldn't have said that, right? As an educator, you shouldn't say that. But the other part is looking at how I'm moving around. Okay, it's not like she pulling out of, you know what I mean?
Right, out of her hat. She's going by what she sees.
Right. So for someone like me to be sitting in this seat right now today, coming from where I come from, it's like I said, it's a God involved.
Absolutely.
It's a God involved. Yeah. So
that foundation.
And I'm not sitting here trying to, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing sanctified about me. There's none of that. I ain't claiming none of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't claim none of that. So just telling you that, I'm a work in progress. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be that until I turn into dust.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and I'm
but
just, I hope for the best.
Yeah.
Like I hope that I receive the mercy that none of us is due, that none of us deserves.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'll leave it at that. I'll leave that like that.
And we'll let you leave it at that, because that can turn that can turn into a different conversation, and people have their own opinions on, and we don't want to go there, right? We don't want to go there. But the truth is,
I'm talking about myself.
Right.
I can't speak for nobody.
Right. But the truth is, you spoke for yourself and said, faith. Without faith and without God, because there is a God, like you said, whatever, whoever you call him, you can't deny it. You just can't deny it. So that's awesome. And I hope that young dudes or young people, females too, that may be listening to this, understand that life doesn't have to be what people say it's gonna be just because they said it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And yes, you lived the way you were navigating the streets, right? Navigating the streets in a way where someone looking at you like your guidance counselor, saying what she said, even though that's nothing that you say to somebody, right? But she was going by, but
some of that helped him through his journey.
Right.
That was some of that survivor
help
skills
with everybody. Like there's a lot of people that take that and they say, well, they always said that I wasn't going to be nothing, so I'm not going to.
No. I'm saying his survival in the streets, his way helped him to survive.
That instinct. His instinct was like, wow, that hurt, but you know what? I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Exactly.
Kind of, sort of. Even if he didn't know to say that at that time, but you knew that life was going to be better for you because of the Chris Loves and other people that did impart on you.
Let me add this, because this is very important to this point right here. So my mother, right, God rest her soul. I know you know my mom, Sean.
Yeah, loved her.
But my mom used to say to me, my mom used to say two things to me before I was even able to comprehend what they meant. She used to tell me, when I tell you she used to beat this in my head, she used to tell me knowledge is power before I even understood what those what those 3 words meant. Like, how do these 3 words even go together in a sentence? Like, what does this mean? My brain was too young to even understand what this meant. This is how young I was and how far back I remember, because she would beat this into my head. She would tell me knowledge is power, and she would tell me you can do anything that you put your mind to, right? I don't know what this means. I was 4, 3, you know, I was too young to comprehend what she said, but she kept saying it, saying it. And as I got older and older, I started to kind of understand it. And then as I got older, it started to make a little bit of sense. And then, but she kept beating it into me. So by the time I'm 17 years old, still running around like a you know, like
another
a
head
across the street. but and then by the time I get to high school and this guidance counselor say something that to me, you know what I'm saying? My mother already, so I already walk, right? This is something I know about myself. Like, this is something that I understand. People used to think that I was, you know, I don't know, whatever. They thought, you know, he arrogant or whatever. You know, people would think whatever they would think, you know what I'm saying? But what they didn't understand was my mother beat a confidence into me. You know what I'm saying? And I carry myself with this confidence that this woman beat into my chest.
Yes.
So when I walked, that's what you were seeing.
Nothing
to do with what I thought. If you didn't know me, you just don't know. But if you knew me, then you knew it was something different.
Right,
you know This came from my mother. So when this lady, when this guidance counselor was saying that to me, it was like my mother had put something in me that resisted that. I couldn't accept that, because my mother told me something way different about myself that I believed, because this is somebody I loved and trusted.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? As opposed to somebody that, you know, made it clear she didn't love or deserve my trust. So who am I gonna believe?
Right.
But on the other hand, now if I didn't have my mother beating that into my head, why wouldn't I internalize that from this education?
Exactly.
You know
That's why we have to be careful of our words, careful how we speak to our children.
Yes.
We gotta be careful about who we put our children in front of so-called educators. Like, we gotta be careful about that.
So this piece of the conversation is one that is like, I always said that my kids will never grow up. My kids will always grow up knowing that their mother loved them, no matter what, right? And that starts at 2, 3 years old. So your mother, for you saying your mother beat that in your head, I hope somebody hears this, because what we say to our children makes the biggest difference. Like you said, what she said to you all your life up until that point of that one person that didn't care nothing about you, didn't know you, didn't want to know you, and just said what they said and was hoping that you proved them right, which your mother already had that foundation. There you go again, going back to the word foundation, right? That foundation. And I hope people are out there listening, because when we talk about, and I'm going to go on a tangent just for 2 seconds, just let me go 2 seconds, right? When people talk about these banned books and they're upset that the schools are not doing this, that, and the other, whatever. And my conversation with, quote unquote, I have a couple of clients that are scholars, right? And of a upper echelon, and they want to fight the system. I said, why do you all want to keep fighting a system that never cared about us, and don't care about us? So why are we going to keep fighting that system as opposed to circumvent, stop getting sidetracked, and do what Dr. Wright's doing and making a difference by being in that classroom and showing them something different? Like you said, we have to be careful who we put our children in front of for education. So even when my kids were little, they learned. My son knew by the time he went to school at 3, he knew his name, his last name, his phone number, his mother's name, not mommy and daddy. You know what I mean? Knew all of that. And people sit there and they go, well, the school didn't teach my kid or this. No, they're not supposed to. I'm talking to a girl right now that brought her kids out of Waterbury to school. But when she's telling me what she's dealing with, I'm like, get your kids out of that school. They don't care about your baby. So he's going to break your, but the education system, they don't care about your son's education. So you say that the education is good over there. That's why you took them over to this other city, right? For education, but they're not treating your child in the way that you want. So you're going back and take your child out. We have to protect our kids. We have to show them. We as a people, not as a person, we as a people have to take control over what we used to do when Jim Crow when there was Jim Crow, right? Jim Crow, what happened? We still had doctors and lawyers and judges and everything coming out of an all-Black education system. Not saying that we need to go back to that. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is
it's not a bad idea. No.
It's not a bad idea, exactly. But at the same time, instead of fighting these people to make them do right by us when they never will, they never will. And I know I'm recording this. If this is hurting anybody's feelings, I'm sorry, but this is how I feel. And we as a people need to get back to doing what's best for us and making sure that we are pounding knowledge is power, and you can do anything that you put your mind to. We need to be saying that to every little kid, Black, white, and indifferent, but especially ours. When we're in our household, at our tables, we need to be talking like that on a regular basis to our children so that when they do meet that guidance counselor that's telling them, oh, don't apply for Howard, don't apply for Harvard, don't apply for, you know what I'm saying? But you're never going to get in there. Stop it. Just stop it. So I'm sorry, I had to just go on that tangent.
You're talking my language. So let me just say, because like this is what this is
your purpose.
Yeah, this is my primary research.
Yes.
This is what I study. This is what I teach.
Okay.
This is what I write about. All right. So I'm just gonna give you some. My tangent is gonna be shorter than yours. I'm gonna just give. I'm gonna give you some.
Yeah, she went over 2 seconds. She went over 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some historical context that validates and solidifies what you just said. And all of us know it. All of us know it, but so many of us forgot it, and they don't really understand we just don't understand the context because who's teaching it? All right. So here it is. So we had in this country. We had a 100-year educational system, a segregated educational system. From the time slavery ended, 1865, to the civil rights movement around 1964. 100-year educational system. Do you know what Black people produced between that 100 years? We produced the most incredible people that this planet has seen in the last several hundred years.
I believe
within that segregated school system. All of the civil rights leaders and organizers, all of them were products of segregated schools. Mm-hmm. All of the incredible thinkers and philosophers and brilliant intellectuals came out of that system. All of the incredible musicians, singers, songwriters, instrumentalists, they all came from that system.
Yeah.
Explain to me how that's not the best thing for. We got 70 years. We've been in this integrated system for 70 years. We have 70 years worth of empirical evidence that shows since we dismantled that system and they forced us into these integrated schools with these hostile white educators, right? And even if they're not hostile, the fact that a lot of them just don't know us, they don't know how to educate, they don't know how to deal with us. So you have these two extremes. You have on one end, you have them who just are, just maybe bought into the societal tropes about Black people and they just don't like Black folks. And then you got a lot of those kinds of educators. We all know, right? We all know. We all products of Waterbury Public Schools. We all know.
Yeah.
All right. So you got those kinds, and then you got the other kinds who are really nice. But they too damn nice. They don't know how to educate us. They don't know how to put us in our place. When you got Black educators like Mr. Franklin and Miss Reeves and these folks, if you don't sit down,
right.
Yo, it matters.
It does matter.
Not only that, but boy, if you don't sit down and don't make me call your mother and do this damn work, you know how to do it. You know how to do it. Do it.
Do it. Yeah.
Come on, man. So this is what we had. We had this for 100 years.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people that's buying into, okay, they say, okay, well, this is what we got. Okay, we could change it.
We can change it. Oh my goodness.
You gotta want to, they gotta want to change it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, my tangent went on a little longer than I had wanted.
That's all right. That's why we here.
I just wanted to give you that little piece of that little nugget, Sean, because
Thank
you on to something for sure.
Thanks.
What with the conversation that you guys are having, but that we are having, what are you doing or incorporating into how you're raising your boys? You know, your journey and everything that you went through, your education, your obstacles, your teachers, you know, the people that helped you along the way. How are you transforming that in raising your children?
I don't know if I'm doing, I'm gonna just keep. I don't know how else to do it. It's just straight up and down. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I don't know how well of a job I'm doing. Because I wish I had, because I know what they need, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm in the school system. What I do is a lot of the principals. I'm not stunting or nothing, but like a lot of the principals. And a lot of them are my students. A lot of the principals that are looking for doctorate degrees and whatnot. I teach in programs where high school principals and all K through 12 principals are my students. I teach in schools where teachers who want to become principals are my students. I teach in programs where school administrators who work in the district office. These are my students, right? And so I see them, and I see them. It's frustrating because I know what is going on, the inner workings of the school system. That's my point. So I say I don't know if I'm doing a good job because I know so much about the schools, and I know that history that I just told you. I don't know if I'm giving my kids the best. Like if I had it my way, I would not have them I would homeschool them. I would have them in a different, like I would try to, if I had my way, I would have them in a community of people who understood them, who believed in them, and knew how to communicate with them, knew how to help them navigate the racist society that they're going to inherit.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I will have them in a community with educators that's built around that. See, because our public school system is not designed that. It's not designed that.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say, I don't know. I'm not doing, I have my moments where, I sit them down and I tell them, you listen, I'm not telling you what I heard. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I've been through. So I'm giving you information like this is, I'm not telling you what somebody told me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I do a lot of like a lot of stuff like that. I'm like, I'll tell my kids, I said, listen, man, I'm not gonna tell you who should be your friends, but I'll tell you one thing. I'm not gonna tell you who to pick as your friend, but this is what I'm gonna tell you. The kinds of people that you choose to befriend, it's going to say a lot about you. So if your friends are, if they got aspirations to become doctors, or like my kids, they box. So they got aspirations to be Golden Gloves and, champions and all that stuff. And it's possible if they stay the course and if that's something they want to do, then they have the resources available to them to do that. So my thing is just to give an example. If your friends are people that have those same aspirations as you, you know what I'm saying? Like, and people that can push you to that end, you know what I mean? That's really who you want to befriend. If your friends are people who aren't, really supporting your goals, or who have lofty goals of their own, somebody gonna be pulling somebody. Like, they're gonna be pulling you away from what you need to be doing, or
what you want to do,
or you're gonna be exerting too much energy trying to pull them to somewhere you might not be wanting to go.
Right.
And I say this, and I say, listen, I'm not telling you who to befriend because I'm under no illusions. I can't tell you that anyway. Right. I'm just telling you that you need to consider all of this when you choose your friends. So I don't really know I don't really know. The jury's still out. I hope that.
But the thing is,
there's no book though. There's no book.
Right. And the thing is, what I see with my kids as adults, that all the, your kids are young, and you don't know how well you're doing until they become adults. Right. And now that my kids are adults, man, I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, I did all right then. I didn't do it by myself. I did it absolutely with the village and their father.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
I didn't do it by myself. But at the same time, it's so amazing to just watch them. And so Tracy and I, we came from Pearl Lake together, right? That was across town in Gilead Drive. I don't know if you remember,
My
right?
grandmother lived up there.
Right. Okay, so that's where Tracy and I grew up, right?
You know,
And so
Brian keeps saying that too. Brian keeps saying Manny's from Pearl Lake. I'm like, Manny's not from Pearl Lake.
I'm not
Your
from-
grandmother lived up there.
Right. I used to
Your
be
grandmother
there.
lived up there.
We all was
yeah,
up
used to
Okay.
be there, right?
Yeah.
So
That was
but when I-
headquarters. That was the family headquarters when my
Yeah.
grandmother was up there.
It was, and I think that was when we were older, though, Trey. I believe. I think
Yeah,
that was when we were older.
I was. You're right. We were because
Yeah.
I was like close to. I was like in my teenage years. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But the thing is, when you think about that, like you said, that was headquarters for us. We always reminisce about that for us, and we
Mhm.
always
could
talk
go
about
back
we
to that.
wish we could have brought our kids up. We wish we knew the wherewithal at that time to bring our kids up together that same way. Even though our kids are still brought up together, but they're not close knit like Tracy and I, and there's a few others that
Right.
we always talk about this. And so I talk about also, even though you talk about how the crack era happened and, the public school system and the whole nine, but we still have Black excellence here, right? Meaning, like your grandmothers, your aunties, I know all your family, you know what I mean? And they, how they beat it in our heads. You act right, you do right. Even if you in the street acting a fool, but you knew somebody snatched you up, they could snatch you up with no problem, right? And when we think about now, we have to get back to that, in a way where these kids know that people care about them. That's where the problem is. They don't think people care about them. And then they go to the school system and they treat them even worse, even if they do have one Black teacher or another teacher that looks like them or whatever, but it's still far and few in between. You know what I mean? So when I think about that, I say we are responsible, and I keep going back to that. We are responsible for making that change, for bringing that back, or to create that for the generations to come. Like my grandson, I have a grandson right now. And the only thing that I keep saying to my daughter is, oh, I can't wait for him to walk and talk and put his backpack on because we going. I said, and we are homeschooling him. He ain't going to school. And Cheyenne goes, yeah, Ma. Okay. I said, listen, you don't even know. We are homeschooling him. I said, because he's not going to be a product of someone tearing him up or tearing him down. My son has cerebral palsy. And he said to me, Ma, I think you put your head in the sand when it came to my disability. I said, what you mean? He said, well, you never treated me like I had a disability. I said, that's not putting my head in the sand. That's making sure that you understood that you can do whatever it is. I said, there's people out here, no arms, no legs, right? There's people out here, no arms, no legs, driving, living a full life. Why? If somebody else said it to you, it won't come from your mama. It ain't gonna come from my house. You know what I mean? And so he just recently said that. And he's 35 years old now. So it's like,
how y'all the same age, Sean?
Right? That's what I said. That's what I said. I said, Kyle, how you 34? When he turned 34, I said, I'm not going to 35. I'm not saying it. I said, but how you 34 and I'm only 34? But yeah, so that's another reason why this book has to be on the shelves, not on the shelves, in the hands.
Turn it around.
In the hands, right? Oh, I'm sorry. In the hands, right? In the hands of our children, in the hands of young mothers and fathers, in the hands of those educators that are so ambitious about being an educator, and then they get into the system and they realize the politics is not going to allow them to be who they want to be as an educator. You know what I mean? That's why I'm so excited and so proud to see where you are and who you are right now, right? Because yeah, Manny walked with confidence. You always did. And you know, we will always have conversations when you come in the shop. We used to come in the shop and we'd have some deep conversations. And so it's okay. It's okay to put this on the reader's list as an educator. You know what I mean? And then really have some deep thought conversations about it, having them do some book reports. Do they even do that anymore? But doing a book report and actually have some real dialogue with these kids so that they understand that, you know, you don't have to be a product of your environment in the way that they expect you to be.